I'm Katty Kay, live in Des Moines, where we are waiting at the Iowa caucuses for the first results to come in from the first contest in the Democratic race to see who is going to be the candidate to try to unseat Donald Trump in November.
In London, I'm Mike Embley with the day's other stories. Forced medical care. People held down to be sprayed with disinfectant. China takes extreme measures to tackle the spread of the coronavirus. A knife attack in London brings a promise from the government of fundamental changes to the way convicted terrorists are handled.
Welcome to this BBC News special reporting on the Iowa caucuses. I'm here with Christian Fraser in Des Moines. We are waiting for the Democratic
Still
caucus.
waiting.
Still waiting. We have been waiting for about an hour and a half now. We were told about an hour and a half ago, 90 minutes ago, that the results were imminent and we would be getting them any minute now. We're still waiting. We think there is some delay because the Democratic Party is determined to make sure that when they do release the results, they are absolutely right. We're told that this is down to a quality control issue. It could also mean that the results are close here in Iowa, and that would mean different things for different candidates who are running.
There are American networks in this room who sent all their big guns to cover this, and for their evening bulletins they wanted a result. And so you are hearing the hum of crisis, the hum of crisis in the room that we still don't have a result and it's not on time. But of course it's paramount. In elections in the UK, we have counts and we get recounts. It is paramount that it is accurate at the end of the day. That is all what matters. But you can imagine for the candidates who want to move on to New Hampshire, which is the next race next week. They want to get the result out as quickly as possible. And also for Democrats tonight, Caddy, it's an important moment to have their night because we've had impeachment. Tomorrow we've got the State of the Union address for Donald Trump. Yeah. And really this was supposed to be their night where they were talking about their candidates.
The risk for Democrats is that by tomorrow all of the news will be overtaken in the United States with the State of Union, the impeachment of Donald Trump. And if they don't have time to celebrate Iowa, it all gets slightly lost. One of those candidates, of course, who's hoping for a good night, would like those results to come in, is Bernie Sanders. The BBC's North America editor, John Sopel, is there for us. Are they starting to get impatient, John?
Look, I think this is very bad for the Democratic Party that it's all taking so long. Let me just read you the statement that we've had from the Iowa Democratic Party. The integrity of the results is paramount. We have experienced a delay in the results due to quality checks and the fact that the Iowa Democratic Party is reporting out 3 data sets for the first time. What we know right now is that around 25% of precincts have reported, and early data indicates turnout is on pace for 2016. Now, if you're introducing new systems, then, I saw Tom Perez last week, who is the head of the Democratic National Committee in charge of running this, and he was saying to me that he was very confident that all the concerns about security and everything else had been met and that the system would be robust. Looking a little less robust now. I mean, in the great scheme of things, if we get the results in 15 minutes, doesn't matter so much. If this goes on and on and on, then I think it kind of, as you were saying, it was always very odd that the State of the Union had been called for tomorrow night, which will wipe out a lot of the victory speeches and, when the Democrats would have had their place in the sun. If all that they get is they couldn't deliver the results. Meanwhile, tomorrow Donald Trump stands up for the biggest televised audience he'll have before the November election. Hasn't worked out so well.
Yeah, I mean, it is a complicated system, of course, here in Iowa, John, because they caucus. They don't fill out ballot papers with crosses on, and there's 2 alignments, so they go from one candidate, their first preferential candidate, maybe to another. It can get quite complicated, and you've 3 sets of results to coalesce as well. But the problem is that the American networks who are here tonight are now filling airspace with whether Iowa is actually a good system for picking a candidate. That's the problem for Iowa.
Well, I mean, I think there is an argument there, irrespective of the delay. I think that, the idea of me turning out in my small community where I've got to declare how I'm going to vote, and then there may be someone who's a bit bullying, overbearing, saying, well, you should come and caucus with us. there is a lot to be said for the privacy of the polling booth and you having a chance to reflect, having listened beforehand. So, I mean, I think there are legitimate questions as well. And also, you know, Iowa is not the most representative state of the union. As you say, it's 90% white. So I think there are questions wider than just the delay in tonight's results. But Iowa kind of loves its first-in-the-nation status. It's also very good for business. I mean, just look at how many people are here and who've come to Iowa to be here for this moment. But it is not going according to plan, although I suspect if Bernie Sanders has won, he won't be worrying about a 2-hour, 3-hour, 4-hour delay.
Okay, John Sopel there at Bernie Sanders' headquarters. You can see there the live shot from the Bernie Sanders party. They will hope they're going to celebrate. Obviously, they all hope they're going to celebrate, and they have to wait until those results come in. Of course, it's not every cycle that you have an impeachment and a State of the Union taking place the very same time as the Iowa caucuses, and the Iowa caucuses are being stamped on to some extent by that. But back in 2008, by this time of night, 10 p.m. in Iowa, Barack Obama had already given his victory speech. And that gives you some sense of how late this is. And remember, this is 11 p.m. on the East Coast of the United States. People have gone to bed without knowing what the results of the Iowa caucuses are.
As we've already discussed, the Democrats then missed their window to talk about their candidates before the State of the Union tomorrow. But it's not just that, is it? If they're going back over the results, and if the results are as close as perhaps this delay might suggest they are, maybe they're having to recount because it is so close, then you wonder, for all the money that's been spent here in Iowa, is it really going to deliver the sort of headline news that the Democrats were hoping for if you've got 3 or 4 people who are all stuck on the same result?
John was saying there, the turnout looks like it was the same as 2016. That's not a record. 2008 is the number, the highest number the Democrats have ever had. That was Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. So that's a high number, but it's not a record high number if it's only up at 2016 levels.
Let's go to the camp of Joe Biden, the former vice president, who, of course, is one of the more moderate to the centre candidates, also in that top tier, be expecting to do quite well this evening. Nick Bryant is there for us. We're just speculating, Nick, that maybe the delay means that actually there's not much between these candidates. It's going to be very tight. And what does that mean going into New Hampshire next week?
If that's the case.
Well, if that's the case, then we don't get a clear-cut result here. You know, we're back where we were at the start of the process in a way, aren't we? I mean, the story of the night so far is there isn't a story of the night politically. It's all about process. The old conventional wisdom about 3 hours ago was, isn't it wonderful, this great Iowa caucus, that we see this great communal act of democracy. The new conventional wisdom's taken over, which says this system sucks. We've got, and it's raised the question, which is asked perennially, quadrennially, should Iowa host the first contest of the race? It is the 4th whitest state in America. It's not demographically representative. The argument always is that Iowans are very civic-minded. They take this process very seriously. They give all the candidates a very close look. But the truth is, a relatively small number of Iowans actually turn up to these caucuses in the first place. So we're going to be back where we are so often in the past. We're going to be having a debate about the Iowa caucus. And I'm old enough to remember what happened in 2012. We actually left here thinking that Mitt Romney had actually won the Republican Iowa caucus, and it only emerged a little while afterwards that it was actually Rick Santorum, the former Pennsylvania senator.
Yeah, and who remembers Rick Santorum, which is a good way of reminding us, Nick, that Iowa doesn't actually always pick the winners, eventual winners that get the nomination, let alone who win the presidency. Anyway, so what are they making of this at Joe Biden's headquarters? What are people saying? What's the mood like there?
Oh, look, they're really confused, they're really frustrated. As you say, Barack Obama hadn't only delivered his victory speech by this time in 2008, he was halfway to New Hampshire. His plane had taken off from the airport. You know, going back to the form guide of Iowa, you're absolutely right. The Republican Iowa caucus is an absolutely terrible form guide. We haven't had a President Rick Santorum. We haven't had a President Mike Huckabee. We haven't had a President Ted Cruz. He beat Donald Trump here 4 years ago. But it is a good form guide on the Democratic side. We did end up seeing a President Obama who won here in 2008. Hillary Clinton won here 4 years ago. She went on to win the nomination. John Kerry won here in 2004. He went on to win the nomination. Every single Democrat who's won the Iowa caucus since the year 2000 has actually gone on to win the Democratic nomination. Doesn't always work. Clinton didn't win in 1992 as a local senator called Tom Harkin. They didn't even bother having a serious race here in Iowa. Jimmy Carter, obviously the famous, he made Iowa his home and emerged as a surprise candidate. It is a pretty good form guy for the Democrats, but what we might get tonight is a somewhat sort of messy and not necessarily a clear-cut result. But we simply don't know because we haven't got any numbers.
I have always wondered whether we shouldn't have the first contest in the nation somewhere, I don't know, like Florida, Hawaii, just...
What, so that we could go and cover it?
Just
I'd be up for
suggesting.
that.
Nick,
Yeah.
Brian, thank you very much.
I'm going to just
No, look, it's great. The whole process of the engagement, the amount of education, the fact that people take it so seriously, all of that is great. But it's interesting that on the first year that they are reporting hard data for all of these processes, they're thinking, ooh, have we actually got this right? Which is leading some people on social media to say, have they actually had it right in previous years?
And not only do you have this convoluted system where you have people sort of going from their first preference to another candidate, their second preference, but tonight, in one caucus where we had a reporter tonight, it was so close between Amy Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg that they couldn't split them, so they had to toss the coin to see who'd actually won. That's the nature of the Iowa caucuses.
Chris Buckler at Elizabeth Warren's campaign headquarters. Confusion, frustration there as well?
Do you know what? Actually, the atmosphere is pretty good, but they did expect to have something like a result. You can see behind me that the podium has been set up for Elizabeth Warren. They did expect that she would be speaking about this time, they hope celebrating, and instead everybody is standing about just wondering what the heck has happened. And if you think about it, these are all the people that have been out campaigning. We've got like precinct captains, those who were there really pushing for their candidates, and they feel that they've done the hard work. They now frankly want the result, and they haven't got it yet. So, I mean, the atmosphere bizarrely is pretty good, but there is this real worry about what is happening and what the delay actually is. And I suppose it's exactly what you guys were talking about there, is the fact that we don't just have one number now. We have the first vote, the second vote once people who are not viable are put into other groups, and then the number of delegates that will be pledged at the end of this. And it is that thing that potentially we could have three different campaigns all claiming victory once they see these figures. But in the meantime, they just want to see the figures.
Yeah, you do really wonder what the value of all those results are to the American public. What they really want to know is who's finished top, second and third, and that's all that really matters, isn't it? And if that's the delay, then they're going to have to look at that again and come up with a better formula. I mean, the fact that there is great excitement at Elizabeth Warren's headquarters tonight, Chris, is indicative, really, of the fact that this time, unlike 2016, there are 3 or 4 candidates who are very much in the running. Last time it was Clinton or Bernie Sanders. This time it could be maybe one of 5.
Yeah, and beyond that, I mean, if this is a 4 or 5 way fight, it again leaves it open for each of these camps to start to look at these figures and interpret them, or some would say spin them in a way that is good for them. I can't help but feel if this is as tight, and that's part of the reason that these figures are going to be delayed, that we aren't going to get a number of these candidates saying, actually, this has turned out really well for me. And you know, you look at the crowd behind me here and you talk to them, and they are very clear that at the caucuses they were getting a really good feedback. They feel that they've managed to get a decent vote out here, but it's not exceptional numbers that are voting in these caucuses. So you would think that the Democratic Party would have found a way to handle this. I suppose, though, we should also be fair. Ultimately, if this is quality checks, or if this is a way of just making sure that the results are right, then perhaps the Democratic Party figures are going to say it's worth doing, rather than sticking out figures that could be challenged at a later date. They want to get this process right. But in the meantime, all of the candidates and all of their campaigners are just standing about waiting and becoming a little bit uneasy. But at the same time, as I say, it is adding to the kind of event of the night, if you like. It's just we don't know how long this night is going to go on.
Okay, Chris Buckler there at Elizabeth Warren campaign's headquarters. Thank you very much for joining us. This turnout number, which we do have, comparable to 2016. Earlier today, Bernie Sanders' wife, Dr. Sanders, was saying that In elections where there's been high turnout, Bernie's done well.
Yep.
In elections where there is not high turnout, Bernie has done less well. Everyone today at this Iowa caucuses, a lot of people have been predicting that there would be very high, possibly even record turnout. There isn't. It's at 2016 levels.
And we were saying to John Sopel earlier that Bernie Sanders' camp had said specifically they'd gone out for those people who didn't
Were new
caucus.
voters.
New voters, and if they've not turned out, that
you can get all of the
would not
results
be very good for Sanders.
when they actually come through, and all of the other information on the website. It's there, of course, bbc.com/news. You can find everything there as it unfolds here at the Iowa caucuses. For the moment, though, let's get some more of the other news from around the world. Mike Embley is in London for us. Mike.
Thanks, Caddy. Thanks to you all. Stay with us if you can. On BBC News, there is much more to come, including this, the life and times of Mad Mike, the mercenary who's died at the age of 100.
This is the moment that millions in Iran have been waiting for. After his long years in exile, the first hesitant steps of Ayatollah Khomeini on Iranian soil.
South Africa's white government has offered its black opponents concessions unparalleled in the history of apartheid, and the ANC leader Nelson Mandela is to be set free unconditionally.
3, 2, a countdown to a critical moment. The world's most powerful rocket ignited all 27 of its engines at once. And apart from its power, it's this recycling of the rocket, slashing the cost of a launch, that makes this a breakthrough in the business of space travel.
2 Americans have become the first humans to walk in space without any lifeline to their spaceship. One of them called it a piece of cake.
Thousands of people have given the yachtswoman Ellen MacArthur a spectacular homecoming in the Cornish port of Falmouth after she smashed the world record for sailing solo around the world non-stop.
Welcome back. Good to have you with us on BBC News. One story dominating the news this hour. Voters in the American state of Iowa have been holding caucus meetings to choose a Democratic Party contender to take on Donald Trump in November's presidential election. We are not there yet. Other news, though, there are now more than 20,000 confirmed cases of coronavirus worldwide. 425 people have died from the illness, the vast majority in China. We've heard in the past few hours, too, that Hong Kong has reported its first death. The coronavirus, of course, originated in the Chinese city of Wuhan. From Hong Kong, Rupert Wingfield-Hayes sent this.
In a Wuhan virus ward, a group of nurses and patients are singing a famous patriotic anthem. My motherland and I, they sing, are never apart. The propaganda message is not difficult to understand. In China's state media, the focus is now on uniting the country to fight the virus. Hundreds of military doctors and nurses have been arriving in Wuhan to join the battle. When our country is in difficulty, this female soldier says, it is our duty to be on the front line. China's logistical capabilities are beyond dispute. Which other country could complete a 1,000-bed hospital in less than 2 weeks? Today, that is exactly what happened as the first patients arrived. But there is an ugly side to this all-out fight against the virus. In this unverified footage, the man pinned on the ground was caught without a face mask. Spray him with disinfectant, the official shouts. In much of China, wearing a mask is now compulsory, despite doubts about their effectiveness. In this video, a whole family is being forcibly removed from their home to a waiting ambulance. Lots of videos like these are being shared to foreign websites. They show police locking an old man suspected of having the virus in his home. Do you have enough rice? The policeman says. Okay, we're chaining the door. Here, the policemen are warning a resident who has posted something about the virus on social media. Sharing any information about the virus is illegal, he tells her.
Scenes like those now can be found right across social media, and they're really fueling the sense of anxiety and fear about the coronavirus that is spreading right around the world, but nowhere more so than here in Hong Kong. People here simply do not believe they're getting a realistic picture of what is happening in Wuhan and central China. And that's why there is now a crescendo of demands that Hong Kong close its border with the mainland completely.
Hong Kong's chief executive today ordered more border crossings closed, but said some must remain open.
There were indeed more Hong Kong people crossing the border almost on a daily basis, and then they have to come back.
That was not good enough for these hospital workers, who have now voted to strike until the border is shut. Fear is even more contagious than the virus. This is the centre of Shanghai, China's biggest city and economic heart. When the bill comes in for all of this, it is going to be huge. Rupert Wingfield-Hayes, BBC News, in Hong Kong.
The British government has promised fundamental changes to the way convicted terrorists are handled. This in the wake of Sunday's knife attack in South London. Sudesh Aman was shot dead by police, but not before he stabbed two people in Streatham. Here's a report from Lucy Manning.
This, unfortunately, is not the first time. A high street, forensic teams, police investigating an attack, a former prisoner using his freedom to try and kill. Yesterday, it was Streatham. Plainclothes officers, guns drawn, have shot a man after he steals a knife and starts stabbing others. They've had Sudesh Aman under surveillance, so more officers quickly arrive, one on a motorbike.
This ain't real.
One of the armed officers approaches him as he lies on the ground wearing a fake suicide vest. "Get back," they shout. A surveillance officer uses his armed colleagues for cover.
Go.
They start to clear the street. People rush to help the injured, blood on the pavement. A man and a woman were stabbed. Both are recovering.
People got stabbed and...
Sudesh Aman had only been released from prison 10 days ago, automatically let out halfway through his 3-year sentence for terrorism offences. He pledged allegiance to Islamic State and had manuals about knife attacks. Aman lived at this Bell hostel around a mile from the attack. Because he was under active counter-terror surveillance, it seems the authorities thought he was possibly one of the most dangerous people in the country. So why was he living behind these gates rather than behind bars? Officers searched the hostel, removing evidence. The police stopped this attack, but how will the politicians prevent it? New emergency laws.
De-radicalising people is a very, very difficult thing to do. It just seems to be there's a big psychological barrier that people find it hard to get back over. And that's why I stress the importance of the custodial option. And that's why I've come to the end of my patience with the idea of automatic early release.
They are let out of prison, but the public is not out of danger.
Well, we don't have a result here at the Iowa caucuses, but we do have some candidates already deciding to speak to their supporters. Let's go straight to Amy Klobuchar, the senator from Minnesota. She's addressing people now.
He appointed the generals that he commands, and yes, the King of Denmark. He even recently blamed Justin Trudeau for cutting him out of the Canadian version of Home Alone 2. Who does that? Who does that? So let me tell you what I will do. When I am behind that desk, I will take responsibility instead of passing it on. I will reach across the aisle and work with Americans in good faith. Instead of picking fights, I'll bring this country together instead of pushing it apart. Some of you may know that old story about Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And it was a story about how after he died, they put his body on a train and it worked its way to Washington, D.C. And there's a story of a reporter who came upon a man who was crying by the side of those tracks. And the man had his hat on his chest and he was sobbing. And the reporter looked at him and said, "Sir, do you know President Roosevelt? Did you know him?" And the man says, "No, I didn't know President Roosevelt, but he knew me. He knew me." And what we are missing so much right now in our country is that sense of empathy. We are missing that caring. And I promise you this, I will bring back that sacred trust between the American people and the President of the United States. If you are sick and tired of hearing how great the economy is when you don't feel it, when your paycheck is stretched to the breaking point month after month, I know you, and I will fight for you. If you are sick of choosing between paying for daycare for your kids and long-term care for your parents, I know you, and I will fight for you. If you're sick of being torn between filling a refrigerator and filling a prescription, I know you, and I will fight for you. And if you want a Democratic nominee who can make our tent bigger and our coalition wider and our coattails longer, if you want that, I know you, and I will fight for you. And if you are sick and tired of the extremes in our politics and the noise and the nonsense, you have a home with me. So please join our campaign at amyklobuchar.com. Join us, because we are going to be here, it looks like, a really long time tonight. And you will have plenty of time to join us at amyklobuchar.com. So let's stay up, let's stay in a good spirit, because you all know what happened out there in those precincts. You know that we have been punching way beyond our weight. You know that despite some limited resources compared to some of those bigger bank accounts, we are way on the board. So let's stay up, let's stay up, let's stay happy, and let's head to New Hampshire. Thank you, Iowa. I love you.
Senator Amy Klobuchar there giving what sounded like a victory speech, even though there are no results here in the Iowa caucuses. And now the question is, do all of the other candidates come out? Because she got full network coverage here, every single network here in the US covering her. It wasn't a victory speech. She didn't say I've won. She didn't say I've lost either, because we simply don't have the results. All we know is that the Democratic Party here in Iowa is currently doing what they call quality control. They are about to speak, they say, to the candidates and the candidates' campaigns to explain what this delay is about, but we still don't know why we don't have a result here out of the Iowa caucuses. As I said earlier, by this time back in 2008, Barack Obama had given his victory speech, gone to bed, or probably got on a plane on the way to New Hampshire and was on to the next campaign. I have certainly never seen, of coming here 5 times, this is my 5th Iowa caucus, I've never seen anything quite like this, where the Democratic Party is having to say we have to do a whole recount and we may not have a result for a while. So the question now is, what does Joe Biden, what does Bernie Sanders, what does Pete Buttigieg, what does Elizabeth Warren do? Do they come out like Amy Klobuchar does? Because of course, remember, she's got to think all of those supporters who are in the room, they've been there for a few hours by now. They've been there 3 or 4 hours waiting for her, and they're going to have to at some point just go home and go to bed. It's a Monday night here in America. People have to go to work tomorrow morning. They have kids at home. They've got babysitters waiting for them, and they're getting tired. So that was why I imagine she made the decision to come out and talk. They're saying that she's outperformed expectations, laying out some of the things that she will do if she is the presidential candidate. We still have no idea whether Amy Klobuchar is going to be the Democratic nominee, but she certainly seized the moment right now, and that was a smart move politically by her to get some of that attention. But the story out of Iowa tonight is this quirky, exceptional system, this complicated process of democratic voting that has in many ways a lot of affection here in the country, because it does inspire people to learn about their candidates. They get access to them. They are very well informed. They are very committed. But somehow the Democratic Party, in trying to release lots of different results, have done something that has caused this mess, really, and is now the focus of attention of people saying, is Iowa really worth it? Can this state, can this caucus system, if it is going to produce this muddied result, is this worth the $60-odd million that have been spent here by the candidates over the course of the last year? So, as I said, we're expecting some of the other candidates to speak. Elizabeth Warren's supporters, the senator from Massachusetts, are hoping that she will come out and speak soon. Remember, both Senator Klobuchar, who we've just seen, and Senator Elizabeth Warren, they've just flown in today. They were on duty at the impeachment trial of Donald Trump during the course of today. They are two of the four candidates who have had to be on duty at the Senate trial. They just flew in hoping that they would have some kind of a victory rally or otherwise, and Elizabeth Warren is now coming up onto the stage for her supporters. She's going to do, I imagine, something similar to Elizabeth Warren, to Amy Klobuchar, thank her supporters, and try to explain to them what is happening in this very unusual situation, and see whether she can make some political hay out of this before she too goes back to Washington, because of course both Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar have to be back on duty in the impeachment trial tomorrow as well. And I understand also that Joe Biden and his wife Jill Biden are also up on the stage too, so I imagine that everybody is going to want to speak fairly soon.
Thank you so much. So listen, it is too close to call, so I'm just going to tell you what I do know. You won! As the baby daughter of a janitor, I am so grateful to be up on this stage tonight. Tonight, as a party, we are one step closer to defeating the most corrupt president in American history. Tomorrow, Donald Trump will make a speech about the State of the Union, but I have a message for every American. Our union is stronger than Donald Trump. And in less than a year, our union will be stronger than ever when that one man is replaced by one very persistent woman. I see America from very different viewpoints, and we have since we were born. Trump grew up in New York City in a 23-room, 9-bathroom mansion. I grew up out in Oklahoma in a 2-bedroom house with 1 bathroom and a converted garage where my 3 brothers lived.
So that was Elizabeth Warren speaking to her supporters. Joe Biden is also speaking to his. Let's take a listen. The former vice president.
Chris, the former President Trump. And folks, as I said, it's bigger than any candidate, bigger than any party. And folks, you know, I said from the outset, Jill and I both said, we're in a battle for the soul of the nation. And that's not hyperbole. We really believe that, and I think it's been demonstrated every single hour he remains as President of the United States. Folks, each and every one of us knows that deep in our bones that everything this nation stands for is at stake. And I really mean it. 4 more years of Donald Trump will fundamentally alter the character of this nation. And character is on the ballot. That's what this is. Everything that makes America, America is at stake, and literally our democracy is at stake, in my view, our view. I say our view because you've been doing as hard as I have. Folks, And folks, I love her too, man. Well, I tell you what, and the other reason we're running and we're gonna make sure it happens is we got to rebuild the backbone of this country. The working class, the middle class, they've been getting laid out badly by this administration. The middle class is being hurt very badly. But look, you know what? We have to unify this country as well. Everybody understands that CEOs and Wall Street bankers didn't build America. Ordinary, hardworking people led by unions build America. Unions. And folks, we need a president who's not only ready to fight, but is also ready to heal this country. We can't hold grudges. We've got to be able to go out and unify the country, because the president is supposed to heal as well as fight. And that's exactly what I plan on doing, we plan on doing, all of us in this hall plan on doing. Ladies and gentlemen, you know, I'm going to go all over this country, every part of the Democratic Party, and unite it. Men, women, gay, straight, everyone, black, brown, a whole universe of people out there. Because folks, there's nothing we've ever failed at when we've tried to do it together. Nothing America's ever failed at. And so, ladies and gentlemen, all my friends, and by the way, I want to take a special thanks again to Al Shapeberg and the firefighters. You've been incredible to us. You've been incredible to us. But folks, everybody knows who Donald Trump is. Well, it's fortunate they do know now. They didn't know last time, I don't think. But they know now. And folks, we got to let them know who we are. We choose hope over fear. We choose science over fiction. Unity over division. And compassion over cruelty. And maybe most importantly of all, truth over lies. Folks, we're going to do this. I promise you. I promise you we're going to get this done. And God willing, we'll do it together. May God bless you all and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. On to New Hampshire.
Former Vice President Joe Biden there speaking with his wife Jill next to him again in this strange position where he can't declare victory, and he's already saying on to New Hampshire. It's sort of the story of Iowa tonight, that you wonder whether after all the money that's been spent here, all of the time that these candidates have spent talking to Iowa voters, whether actually there is going to be much of a bump out of Iowa. And here's why: because in a few hours' time, everybody will have left Des Moines. They'll all be focused back on Washington, D.C., where tomorrow, Tuesday, there is the State of the Union address by President Donald Trump, the continuation of the impeachment trial. On Wednesday, there is the vote in that impeachment trial, which means that the news cycle here in the United States is all going to be wrapped up with State of the Union, impeachment trial, and then it's on to that New Hampshire vote, as Joe Biden just said. So the theory of Iowa has always been that you invested time and money here as a candidate in order to get a bump out of Iowa, in order to get momentum, more media attention, more money comes into your own political campaign. But in this particular cycle, that may not be the case. And I should say there's also been on social media some more conservative groups advocating conspiracy theories about what this delay really means. Is it because there's a fix going on? Is the Democratic National Committee trying to steal the election again from Bernie Sanders? And interestingly, the Iowa Republican Party has come out and said, stop, guys. Don't start spreading these rumors. This is an honest issue. This is about a reporting issue. Let the Democrats get on with it. So the Republican Party here in Iowa coming to the defense of their Democratic colleagues. But you can see how when there is not a result, it leaves a vacuum. And in this social media world that we live in, I'm afraid, into a vacuum jump conspiracy theories. So Bernie Sanders, now also the senator from Vermont, coming up onto the stage. He too, I imagine, going to address his supporters. He too, having been in the impeachment trial of Donald Trump, having to fly back here. Let's go quickly tap in. We heard briefly from Elizabeth Warren earlier, and then we dipped away from her to listen to Joe Biden. But let's go back to the Warren headquarters. Chris Buckler is there. What's she been saying, Chris? We had to jump off to it to listen to Joe Biden, but what's she been saying to her supporters?
Yeah, Elizabeth Warren is speaking to her supporters. I mean, in the event of no results at the moment, she is doing what would be best described as a kind of halfway victory speech, kind of saying that they've had great success in the past couple of months here in Iowa and really looking towards the election. It's been focusing on Donald Trump, focusing on the president rather than other candidates. But I suspect what most people will focus on, and the most interesting line she said is that it's too close to call. Now, I can't tell you whether or not she has spoken to some of those involved in this whole voting procedure and trying to get over these anomalies, but that line did jump out to me, that it's too close to call. It indicates that actually this has turned out to be a pretty tight vote and that Elizabeth Warren is waiting to see what the exact figures will be. But frankly, you can say the campaigners, the supporters, those who had really helped in this effort for Elizabeth Warren had gathered, and frankly she had to come out and say something. The time was marching on and the crowd was becoming frustrated. But, you know, she seemed pretty positive, frankly, as you can see.
Sounds noisy and lively and positive there. Are they thinking there that if this is a close contest, Elizabeth Warren does manage to get a bit of a bump out of this, Chris? Whatever the final result is, of course.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the mood has been very much about Bernie versus Elizabeth, Sanders versus Warren. That is the conversation that you sometimes have with some of those who do support her and who have been campaigning for her. The big move in some of these precincts was actually to try and encourage supporters towards Elizabeth Warren instead of Bernie Sanders during that second round. But, you know, I have to say, she's pretty upbeat. And she was introduced by a couple of her grandchildren who, I have to say, were pretty good speakers themselves and set up for a pretty positive atmosphere here. You know, they are doing their very best to present this as having been a good day for Elizabeth Warren and that she is focusing on taking on Donald Trump. That is the message we're hearing here time and time again. It's about the president. It's not about the mistakes or the voting anomalies or whatever you want to call the delay in this process.
OK, Chris Buckler there at Elizabeth Warren campaign headquarters. All the candidates, of course, trying to make sense of what's happening here in Iowa. Let's go to Nick Bryant. He is at Joe Biden's headquarters. We just heard Joe Biden with his wife, Jill Biden, standing next to him. There's not much that these candidates... I can say is that, Nick, I've never seen anything like this come. We've had results, as you suggested, where we thought somebody had won and then it was overturned. But I've never seen anything quite like this coming out of Iowa.
No, absolutely. I mean, I guess the closest thing we've come is in 2012 when we thought that Mitt Romney had won and actually it was Rick Santorum, and we only found out a while later. Yeah, so this is bizarre. But there is this modern-day tendency in American politics that regardless of the victory, regardless of whether you win or lose, I beg your pardon, you just come out and give the same speech, whatever. You don't give a sort of victory or a concession speech, you just give your stump speech. And you take advantage of the fact that so many people are watching. And we've obviously seen a couple of examples of that tonight. A slick political consultant move to get Amy Klobuchar out front first off. You know, Joe Biden and Jill Biden coming out pretty shortly afterwards. They know it's getting very late on the east coast of America. People are going to bed, especially now that they know there won't be a result for a while. And they want to get their message out. And Joe Biden's message is pretty simple. I'm the guy that can beat Donald Trump. I'm the guy that can unite the Democratic Party. But, Caddy, as you know, and Christian, as you know, he hasn't been that super impressive in Iowa on the stump. He's been pretty listless. He's been at times fairly incoherent. He speaks in these kind of half sentences with these incomplete thoughts. He hasn't been that impressive.
Nick, I'm going to jump in there because Bernie Sanders, the senator from Vermont, has just started speaking to his supporters.
And let Let me begin by stating that I have a strong feeling that at some point the results will be announced. And when those results are announced, I have a good feeling we're going to be doing very, very well here in Iowa. And the message that Iowa has sent to the nation, it's a message shared by the American people, is that we want a government that represents all of us, not just wealthy campaign contributors and the 1%. Tonight, in this enormously consequential 2020 election, the first state in the country has voted, and today marks the beginning of the end for Donald Trump. The most dangerous president in modern American history. You know, no matter what our political views may be, the people of America understand we cannot continue to have a president who is a pathological liar, who is corrupt, who does not understand our Constitution, and is trying to divide our people up based on the color of their skin, based on their religion, their sexual orientation, or where they were born. And all of that hatred, all of that divisiveness is going to end when together we are in the White House. We are going to win this election because the people of the United States are sick and tired of a massive level of income and wealth inequality. They don't want tax breaks for billionaires and cuts to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. The American people understand that if you work 40 hours a week, you should not live in poverty, and that we've got to raise that minimum wage to at least $15 an hour. The American people understand that health care is a human right, not a privilege. And that our administration is going to take on the greed and corruption of the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical industry. And whether they like it or not, we will pass a Medicare for all single-payer program. The American people understand that in the year 2020, all of our people, regardless of income, are entitled to get a higher education. And that is why, together, we will make public colleges and universities tuition-free, and why we will cancel all student debt in America. And we're going to do that through a modest tax on Wall Street speculation. 11 years ago, we bailed out the crooks on Wall Street. Now it is their time to help the middle class. And unlike the President of the United States, The American people understand that climate change is not a hoax, but is an existential threat to our country and the entire world. They understand that the time is now for us to take on the fossil fuel industry, to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energies. And as President of the United States, because this is a global issue, not just an American issue, we are going to speak to the people in China and Russia and countries all over this world and say, maybe, just maybe, instead of spending $1.8 trillion a year on weapons of destruction designed to kill each other, maybe we should pool our resources and fight our common enemy, which is climate change. And the people of America know the time is long overdue for major reforms to a broken and racist criminal justice system. We're going to invest in our young people, in jobs and education, not more jails and incarceration. And the American people also understand that our immigration system is broken, and together we will pass comprehensive immigration reform and a path towards citizenship. And the American people know that gun safety legislation will be written by the American people, not the NRA. And the American people most certainly know that it is women who must control their own bodies, not politicians. So, brothers and sisters, yes, together we will defeat Donald Trump, but we're going to do more than that. Our message to Wall Street and the insurance companies and the drug companies and the fossil fuel industry and the military-industrial complex and the prison-industrial complex, our message to them is change is coming. Together with the strongest grassroots movement this country has ever seen, where we have knocked on hundreds of thousands of doors here in Iowa, we're doing it in New Hampshire. So let me conclude by thanking our great staff, our volunteers here in Iowa. And now it is on to New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina, California, and onward to victory. Thank you all very much.
Senator Bernie Sanders there addressing his supporters on this very strange Iowa caucus night where we still don't have a result. We understand that the Democratic Party has finished its phone calls with the campaigns, with the candidates to explain what is going on. But it does look at the moment like the whole counting process may take a while because it's a very complicated new system. There are questions about some of the technology, whether the app that the precinct chairs had to report the data on was actually working. So it's a very confusing situation here in Iowa. One thing we can say is that it's going to take a while, we think, to get these results, which is not good news for those candidates who were hoping, like perhaps Bernie Sanders, for some kind of a victorious win, to be able to say, I won Iowa, let's move on to the next campaign with the wind in our sails, the money that comes from winning, the attention that comes from winning. None of the candidates are going to be able to have that. What's going to be the focus of attention here in Iowa instead is the Democratic Party's system, and questions tonight about whether the Iowa caucus system really is valid, whether this should be the first state in the union with this system that tonight is producing this very mixed, very messy result for the Democratic candidates as they try to claim the nomination to take on Donald Trump in November's presidential election. That's it for the moment from Iowa.